And with that, we are ready to begin the January ZoomTRAK meeting sponsored by NRail organization. Glad that you all are with us. This meeting is a little special because as part of our 50th anniversary, we've opened this up to all model railroads or anybody who wants to join us today. And we're glad to have them with us. And we're going to discuss, our meeting today is going to be a little more general than normal because hopefully we have a lot of new folks that are going to be joining us. So the first thing up today, John, I think you want to do a little introduction.
I do. Okay. Well, this is our official 50th anniversary banner. And we all think of 50 years in terms of NTRAK. And we have been using the term NTRAK 50, but really what we have is much more than that. It's the 50th anniversary of modular model railroading. And by that, I mean modules that have standards whereby any module anywhere in the world built to that standard can join into a layout. And thinking back over the years, I know we have had modules from Switzerland in our layouts. We've had modules from Japan, as well as our own North American countries. So that standard works. We've been promoting N-scale standards, and it did start with NTRAK in 1973. There are 4 events that NRail is going to participate in this year, as shown on the screen. And at each of those, we're going to have that locomotive, the Cotton Brute, that was custom kit bashed by Jim Fitzgerald back in the late 70s and has been restored. If you read the January-February issue of the newsletter, there's an article in there on how that locomotive was restored. So the first show will be Amherst in West Springfield, Massachusetts. That starts 2 weeks today. And we'll be part of an NTRAK layout complex made up of a number of clubs located in section 151 in the Mallory complex. We'll also be participating in a number of events, including the opening ceremony. And Cotton Brute will be running on I think all the N-scale layouts that will be at the show. The next one will be at the National N-scale Convention in Reno, Nevada in June. Then will be the big celebration at the NMRA Convention and National Train Show in August in Grapevine, Texas. And we'll close out the year at the Altoona N-scale weekend in September in Altoona, Pennsylvania. So you'll see, get a lot of chance to see the locomotive, and we're going to have a few little contests like long freight trains and a little tug of war. Somebody suggested we put Cotton Brute, and going the other way on the track, start adding F-unit diesels and see just how many Cotton Brute can outpull. So it will be fun. Please come by and see us. Come Amherst.
You did a good job.
Okay.
All right, John,
and
thank you.
just to prove the Cotton Brute exists, there it is.
For those of you that don't know, John is the president of NRail. That has been for several years, and he's a big help to all of us. Next up, Bruce, you want to do your little intro thing? Bruce Alcock, who is also a board member and was the second president after the retirement and death of Jim Fitzgerald.
Just a couple of things to announce at this point. We've added to our website a forum. The forum has questions for people to post. Anybody can go and look at the forum, but you really do have to be a member in order to add new posts or respond to questions. And since this is the 50th anniversary, we have a special for new people to become members. there's a discount code that's up on the screen, and we'll put it in chat, and we'll also make it available for anybody who doesn't get a chance to write it down. And that'll reduce the price by 50%. So it's $5 for the first year membership in NTRAK and NRail. Also, just to, as Steve mentioned earlier, ZoomTRAK is generally, well, this is actually our 29th episode, if I'm not mistaken, and normally includes things like product information, how-tos, layout tours. We have a number of different vendors and some really good presentations, short and long, scenery, DCC, you name it. We've covered all of them, and we'll be doing lots more. There's a link there. If you go to YouTube and do a / at NRail, you can see any one of those 28 episodes that are up on YouTube. And so here we go with today's NTRAK. Back to Steve.
Okay. What we're going to do first is we're going to talk about the modular formats that are the most popular that we use that are supported by NRail organization. And by the way, let me mention, when they talked about this third national event, Grapevine, for those of you that aren't familiar, Grapevine is a suburb in the middle, halfway between Dallas and Fort Worth, in the middle of the DFW Metroplex. It's a beautiful country down here, and it's warm. Okay, so the first thing we're going to, of the three formats we're going to discuss are NTRAK, T-TRAK, and Free-moN. First one up is NTRAK, and that is me. So let me do a screen share here. Okay, well, so NTRAK is the granddaddy of modular railroading, as John suggested. Before 1973, before the group of young, then young in-scale model railroaders out in California came up with this concept, there were, if you had a layout, if there was anything in a train show in the way of a layout, somebody brought an entire home layout and put it in there. The concept of modular, as John talked about, where anybody can bring one, they all plug together and fit together, was the new concept and was called NTRAK. So we're going to review the NTRAK itself and let you see how what the standards are for that. So there are standards on a lot of things. Wiring, gauge connectors and polarity, the power, what you must use. And by the way, power is not a requirement, any specific power on NTRAK, unless you are we are getting a bunch of layouts to get a bunch of clubs together and forming multiple loops with multiple power supplies, and we have a standard on that. Track positions at each end of the module are set so they will all be aligned and linked together. There we go. Height is standard. The elevation of the track, about whether you can have grades or not, is a standard. Curves, radius is a standard. Skyboard height is a standard in the fact that these minimums, curves and skyboards, only have minimums. You can make them as large as you can get away with. And you must provide a couple of C-clamps, because that's how they're linked together. They're clamped together with C-clamps. Size is a standard. And the thing about the original NTRAK is it is variable to the extent that you can have, each module can be as long as you want, but there has to be in increments of 1 foot. So you can have a 2 foot wide, a 3 foot wide, a 1 foot wide, a 6 or an 8, or whatever you can get away with, as long as it's multiples of 1 foot. The depth is standard, 2 feet, and you can extend it or up to 6 inches in the back or in the front. But the middle 24 inches is standard, must be that deep. The thing is, it's flexible because it snaps to the 1x1 grid, so it makes layout planning pretty easily. And as long as you have a couple of pieces of the odd stuff, you can get away. You can have 3 4-foot corners and a 3-foot corner. With a couple of 1-footers, or with a 1-footer and a 3-footer, you can make it all fit together fairly easy. So as long as multiple module dioramas are available too, which means if you've got 20 foot of modules, you can go between those 20 foot and have anything any place you want it, as long as it meets the standard at the end of that block of modules, that diorama. So here's a picture of a standard 4 foot module. Pretty simple. Some of them get pretty fancy, but again, it's 4 foot from there to there, and it's 2 foot from the back to the front. And that makes it an NTRAK module. We also have corners inside and outside, 3 foot, 4 foot of the standards, and we'll show you a picture of that in a minute. And junctions are another type of module that came along later. We'll talk about those in a little bit here in another minute here. Here's an example of a 4 foot corner module. You can see it's sticks out, and it looks a little funny because of the angle I'm shooting at it, but it is it has the one corner cut off here and the other corner cut off here, and here's your corners out here at the edge. Other things we do now is we have special modules like balloons, as you see over here on the right, where you can take a little balloon like that, put a couple of standard 4 foot modules between it, put another balloon at the other end, and you've got a nice little layout for a small show. Corners don't necessarily have to be 90 degrees. We've come up with 30 and 45 degree corners that'll let you do some unique things. And we'll talk about how you can use those a little more in a minute. And then large corners of 6 foot or 8 foot, usually have to break those into 2 modules because they get too big and too heavy, and John Kaprowski can't pick them up. Glenn Kaprowski, I'm sorry. And then another thing that's become very popular in gateways is some of us are getting older. Ducking underneath these things has become a bit of a problem, and there are ways to get around that. The thing about mating these things, the standard is that you have to stop your track at 2.5 inches before the end of the module, and we have standard Atlas sectional track, which you can buy off the shelf to connect the 2 modules together. And you connect them with C-clamps underneath. And the other standard is the wiring. You've got to have connectors. You got to have the right number of wires, the right size of wire, and the right type of plug to make them all fit together. And with those standards, everything works, everything plugs. We do have specifications on rail. Code 80 sectional or flex track we added later as it became popular, code 55, but there are some restrictions. For example, old Atlas code 55 didn't work because the standard microtrains wheel sets bumped on the tie. Having a senior moment here. They bumped and they made it bounce around. So Atlas code 55 track wasn't used, the original stuff. Got a UniTRAK with adapters is acceptable now. So we have a lot of things that are standard. The other thing is we're dynamic, but we're also consistent. Standards have been around since '73, and in 50 years that we've been here, only 2 of the standards have changed that required model modifications. And that was the standards on the wiring. As DCC came into effect, we had to have heavier wire, and we needed connectors that gave her less friction, less restriction to current flow. And the other one that was required was removal of the 110 volt power strips underneath the modules, which a lot of fire marshals have made us take them off in certain areas of the country. New standards do not generally adversely affect old standards, and the NRail board of directors is very conscious of this and very protective to see that we don't do anything that's going to screw up a lot of people's modules that are already around. And there is a process when we have a new standard that we're not going to get into today, but it's not done lightly. There are some variations. that have changed things. For example, now we have multi-loop layouts that you can put together with the NTRAK modules. We have peninsulas, and that's where I was talking about the junction modules, where you can, actually it's a T type thing where you can stay on your loop, or you can go out across a little channel to another loop and link to it, and they can all link up together, and you can run around several of them. Peninsulas can be standard NTRAK with a balloon. There was an offshoot called ZoomTRAK that came around several years ago, where you could come out on that off the junction module with a different style of module that just had a single track on it, which was a different concept, but it matched, it was the same height, and you could connect them all up. NTRAK was another such variation that is still around. There was a big NTRAK group at our last National N-Scale Convention in Louisville last year. Dioramas have become popular instead of just a single module, a group of modules. And now we're talking about interfacing with other module types like the T-TRAK and the Free-moN, and somebody else will talk about those later. Helixes and other things like that. The other thing that's changed is that we don't have to be rectilinear anymore. This is an example of an NTRAK layout that really does exist and has been taken to shows. Here's where the 30-degree modules come into play in these corners to make this 120 degrees as a triangle. You can take that triangle and expand it and do all sorts of other things. So we don't have to be rectilinear. You can have bumps and loops and all sorts of unusual things. The pluses of NTRAK is that modules are freestanding with legs. They're ready to go. You set them up and plug them together and you're good. There's plenty of space on each module for scenery. And as I just showed you, they're not necessarily rectilinear. There are some minuses. Sometimes they're large and possibly heavy, which can become a problem, but there are ways to avoid that based on the materials you use to build your module. Some venues don't like layouts with large infields, but again, the solution is inside corners, which lets you double the loop back in. And the other thing that we have to have, that we don't have to have, but it looks a lot better, is skirting. So that is the general introduction to what the N-scale modular format is. And now we're going to talk about the T-TRAK modular scale. And who's going to talk about that? Bruce, I'm up here. I don't have my other stuff showing.
Terry,
there you go. Yep, you're up, Terry. Go ahead.
I'm up. Okay, then. So now we're talking T-TRAK. Some people don't know what it is, so they're saying, talking what? This is a small design format of N-scale module that can fit a layout on tables, and it's very popular. As we celebrate 2023 as the 50th year of NRail and its namesake NTRAK N-scale modular model railroad format, founded by Jim Fitzgerald, we must also recognize another development. Early in the 21st century, Jim and his wife, Lee Monaco Fitzgerald, traveled to Japan, where they were introduced to an N-scale concept of trolley model railroading. Lee envisioned this as a possible modular concept and developed what we now know as T-TRAK. T-TRAK is simply a system of N-scale sections of a possible N-scale model railroad layout built to a standard as modules that, due to their common construction, can be joined with others to create a layout of any size. T-TRAK modules are small enough to be very easily transported. Due to their small standard size, they can create a loop layout on a table. Your kitchen table, dining room table, or a folding banquet table can be home to your temporary railroad empire. Any 30-inch wide table. Or a small point-to-point or switching layout could be constructed on a shelf. T-TRAK module kits are available, as well as custom-built module bases. Or you can build your own from scratch. Yet another option is these gallery-sized painting panels. These are handy for those with limited woodworking skills or shop availability. They're also excellent for youth groups. Just glue on the legs cut from 2x2 lumber and drill some holes for threaded T-nuts or nutserts, or adjustable leg bolts and the attachment of skyboards and plexiglass security shields. Not all of these small modules need power supply wiring, but 1 out of 3 should. So make some holes for track wiring while you're at it. A small single module, slightly larger than 1 foot square, is easily stored and transported in a readily available plastic bin with the security shield and skyboard in place. With the security shield and skyboard removed, a shallower bin could be used dependent on the overall height of the module scenery. Larger module, get a larger bin. Portability. Nesting pairs of T-TRAK modules together with hardboard sheets using the skyboard and security panel bolts allows a pair of modules to take up a little more than the space required by a single module. Plywood sheets on top of the first layer of modules provides a floor for the second story. This small pickup has about 62 linear feet of modules. Train and equipment bins in the back seat with the dog, and the wife riding shotgun up front. Caddo UniTRAK is used exclusively. There is provision for the use of FlexTRAK, but Caddo Flex to UniTRAK adapters must be used at each end of the module for connection to other T-TRAK modules. With the use of Caddo SnapTRAK pieces, module length is measured in millimeters. A single-sized module uses 62 and 248 millimeter track sections for a track length of 310 millimeters. Regardless of module size, the track overhangs each end by 1 millimeter. Each T-TRAK module is like a big piece of SnapTRAK, complete with scenery. When connected together, they are held in place by the Caddo UniTRAK unijoiners. The 1 millimeter track overhang at each end of the modules results in a very small 2 millimeter gap between the modules. T-TRAK standards are available to everyone on the NRail website. You do not have to be a member to access this information. Standard straight modules can be any depth from 8.5 to 14 inches in any multiples of the single size length, doubles, triples, or longer if desired. The standard sizes were meant to allow layouts on single table wide rows of tables. Double wide rows of tables allow for even larger modules and more creative layouts. At the NMRA National Train Show of 2018 in Kansas City, NRail displayed the largest T-TRAK layout to date, 340 modules, equating 732 singles, for a scale 28.4 miles of red line running, provided by over 61 participants, displayed the growing popularity of T-TRAK. Actually, this picture doesn't come anywhere close to showing you just how sized that layout was. When not doing shows or displays, set up a couple of tables at home, run some trains, have some fun. Talking T-TRAK presentations are now available to members on the NRail website on the Tips and Techniques page in PDF format. Thanks for watching.
Thank you, Terry. The third modular format that is becoming very, very popular, it's the youngest of the three, I think, is called Free-moN, and Lee Calkins is going to tell everyone a little bit about that. Lee, take it away.
Hi, my name is Lee Calkins. I live up here in North Idaho. I currently sit on the NRail board, and I'm also on the standards committee for Free-moN standard. The Free-moN standard is a standard that is independent of all the other standards. It was started several years ago, I think 2004. I'll get into it in a second. I started a presentation probably in August or September. I'm sure JM, when he publishes this, can put a link to that first section of a Farragut loop module set I'm building. This is part 2 of that, but it's also an introduction to Free-moN. Farragut loop is a naval base in northern Idaho that was created during World War II as a training base for recruits, and I've decided to model that. So an introduction to Free-moN. The Free-moN standards can be found at freemon.net. Free-moN is a popular modular scale railroading standard designed for individual modelers that specifies benchwork, track work, scenery, and digital control intended to raise the bar for N-scale modular railroading in general, and in this case for N-scale modular railroading. This image is a picture of the National Train Show in Salt Lake in 2019 that I designed and coordinated. It covers 8,000 square feet at that show. So the standard promotes or even forces prototypical appearance and operations by using single track main lines and recently limited double track main lines, traversing the center of the module, resulting in a prototypical point-to-point or loop-to-loop configurations and operations. The Free-moN standard was first published by Wes Steiner in 2004. The spirit of Free-moN. Now, what does these standards really benefit? I'm not going to go over all the standards for Free-moN. There's a document online at freemon.net, but it's designed to satisfy the needs of the advanced modeler over the needs of the beginner and the general public. It incorporates a comfortable working and viewing heights for adults at 50 inches above the floor. It specifies that we use code 55 rail for the main line and a minimum of 22-inch radius curves and number 6 turnouts. It encourages layouts that are optimized for prototypical look and operations by specifying a single track main line down the middle. And recently we've added a double track option. Maximizes the flexibility of your module by only specifying what the end plate interface looks like. So we don't tell you how long the module or what shape the module has to be in. It's recommended that they be no narrower than 12 inches at the end plate and generally no wider than 24 inches at the end plate, but the width over the layout over the module isn't specified. Free-moN encourages a loose association among individuals free of clubs or groups or memberships or dues. I think of all the Free-moN groups, there's only one of them that is an actual club, but there's probably 20 or 30 groups in the United States right now. It standardizes scenery on the end plates to merge visually with the adjacent modules. Everything is DCC on all the modules, and the rolling stock needs to meet the NMRA standards. And all that being said, there are several, what we're looking at the end plates. The end plates are all butt joints. That means the track goes all the way to the end of the module. So there's no fitter rails to try to piece together. We use 3/4-inch birch plywood. It doesn't warp, it stays true. It's 6 inches high, and there's the 24-inch width, but you can go down to a 12-inch width on the end plates. And here's a picture of one of the modules I was working on a couple years ago. One side I've soldered already, the other side I haven't soldered. I use PCB ties to make sure that those rails don't move at any time. I have snagged shirts on those and haven't moved rails. I've torn holes in my hands with those rails and they don't move, and they're always perfectly true and square. So in Free-moN, I generally like to say there's probably 5 different types of modules. Straight modules that just run straight through, and those can have numerous different designs. You can do yards, you can do industries, you can put S-curves into straight modules. Here's some more views of different yards and different ideas and solutions to building Free-moN modules. One of the nice things about Free-moN is you can actually lay out a prototypical scene and then lay modules on top of that scene and actually build the track work to match the curves and the angles that are presented in real life. So here is a bridge module. This is an actual location in Southern California. This is a module from the Inland Pacific group made by Steve. He's got a picture there. You can see a little bit of it at the bottom corner, the image there of the actual bridge that he's trying to model there. And the rocks in the bottom there are rocks that he picked up underneath the bridge and sifted and used to simulate the rocks underneath his model of the bridge. Here's one of the yards that the Inland Pacific groups has. Here's another view of their large yard. So again, this is a double track yard. The tracks end at the end plates at a double track standard. Here's one of the first modules that I ever built. It's a 5-foot long module. There is no specified length for module lengths. Here's another one. I built 2 5-foot modules. And like Terry said about storing the T-TRAK modules face to face, that's the way I prefer to stack all of my modules. I've got a picture later on showing that. So I tend to build them in pairs. So I've got 2 5-footers there. Here is a module that's from a friend of mine. He's got a golf course running down one side and a bridge down the other. This is an 8-foot section with a passing siding. Here is a bridge module that a guy over in Silicon Valley area has built. Single track bridge through a scene. So the depth really doesn't matter. You can go down as low as you want. We do allow for grades on the modules. So your modules can change height as long as it's a 3/4 inch difference on the end from end to end, so that we can adjust for that in our legs. I have a couple modules that do go from a single track to a double track conversion, so I can run some of the double track modules that I've built over the years. And there's lots of different ways you can set those up as well. Here is a double track module of a bridge crossing over it's Mississippi River or Missouri River, I don't remember. It's the Plattsmouth Bridge over there. And sometimes we have accidents that look like the accidents that happen in real life, where you dump a couple 737s into the river. Curved modules. Curved modules, these are all images of a 45-degree module, and they're all part of the Farragut Loop build that I'm working on. But the degree of module curvature is not specified. If you're modeling an area that has a 2.5-degree curve, then build your module at a 2.5-degree angle. Or if you want to build a 90-degree curve, or a 180-degree curve, or a 270-degree curve, or 30, 40, you name it, it is possible to do in N-scale, in Free-moN per the standards. So here's some straight modules, and we've got some curved ones. One of the ones down at the bottom is a module set that a friend of mine's working on. It's the Columbia River Gorge. It's the second one up from the bottom. So it's a bunch of curves along the Columbia River. And I hope they get that done here shortly. I built it for them about 5 or 6 years ago, and they've been working on it for a while. Here's some more curved modules, just different variations of themes and playing with ideas. So here's some modules that people have built in real life. Right here are a couple corners that Silicon Valley group has built. They've got 13 of these corners. They're just little tiny things that we tend to use all over when we get together and meet as a group. Here's a different 45-degree corner with an industry on it. Here's one of the modules I have. That's a horrible image. I should have found a better one. It's an old interchange that's been abandoned, and all that's left is the main line through the middle. Nice thing about the curves and playing with different curves, you get this long train in there, and you get to see all the different snaking of that train through the scenery. This is taken in Evanston. It's in a machine shop, and you've got the huge windows all around. So we've got natural light coming through for taking images and creating cool shadows and making a scene look really good. Here's an S curve that I built. It's a double track S curve. Here's another one of those single 45s. Here is a curve module set that a guy in Minnesota is working on, with the river flowing down the middle. So he's taken the double tracks and split it, and he's running the river down. And there's 6 pieces here, and the 4 middle pieces can be rearranged in any order to make the S curve or make a big, huge U, and whatever design he wants to set up at the time. Here's a horseshoe bend curve. It's not the horseshoe bend in Pennsylvania. This is in Southern California. Just another curve. On to just a couple more curves here. Junction modules. Now, a junction module has more than the standard 2 end plates. This is another section of the Farragut loop. It's an actual just a junction module. It's the one I'm currently working on downstairs. The wiring is almost complete on it. So there's lots of different junctions. We've got 4-sided junctions, 5-sided. You could build, I have an 8-sided junction drawn there. Different interpretations of how to build a junction. So this is a standard Y junction. The end plate to the left of the image is at 90 degrees to the other two. Here's just a standard split junction with no Y capabilities. And they're set off at a 45-degree angle from each other. And here's another junction in that same setup. And this one pitches back to the left. One of the nice things about Free-moN is you can model actual places in the actual angles. This is a junction outside of Sacramento, if I recall. The gentleman in the gray shirt in the top corner owns this. This is Biney Junction. And it will be in Reno. It will be the centerpiece of the Free-moN layout there. This is a junction I and my friend Frank Wilhelm, who's on the call tonight, have been working on. This is in Plummer, Idaho. It's halfway between where he lives in Moscow and where I live up here in Post Falls. And we've been working on it for several years. That's what it looked like before. Here's some scenery on it. A couple weeks, it's going to head back down to his house for more scenery. I don't have a current picture of it, and right now it's stacked downstairs in a pile, so I couldn't get a good photo of it. But it does allow us to build prototypical scenes. Stub end modules that really only have one end plate, are starting to become more and more popular as I get more and more into Free-moN. I'm building all 3 of these for various reasons that we'll get into later. But there's a whole bunch of different stub end modules. You can throw a yard in. One of the Gateway Free-moN guys has one that's got a turntable at the end, like shown on the top one up here. This module, this picture was sent to me this morning. It's set up in just north of Vancouver, Washington today. It's a module by Bert over there. It is a port module, and it's a stub end module with a short yard and runaround track. This module is set up right next to it. It's by a gentleman by the name of Carl, and it is a copper mill, and it is also just a stub end module, so it's only got one end plate. And then 2 of the modules that I am building, this is a 4-foot wide little stub end yard for throwing off the end of a Y to do switching. And here's a little 2-track industry that I'm currently working on. Now we get into loop modules. Now you see all the parts of Farragut are put together. We've got the junction module there at the bottom, the straight module, and then the 5 corners, and that builds Farragut loop. But there's lots of different loops, types, or styles. So here's a bunch of different variations of loops I've drawn over the years. Here's an image of Farragut loops. So I'm modeling the prototypical loop that's out there. You can see the tracks still, the scars of the tracks are still there. As you can still see, the loop is still there. But the tracks have been long gone since the late 40s. There's the cutout wood for Farragut loop. It's way beyond that stage. It's almost completely operational. In fact, I'll have it operational by train show on March 5th. Here is a simple single loop that goes through and has a passing siding. Here's a more complicated loop. I've got a bunch of different photos of this from different shows. This one is done by a good friend of mine named Mark Watson. It's an up and over mountain loop, and it will hold, that's one train right there. It's 87 grain cars through the entire loop, and it looks like we've still got plenty of room to get a couple more cars in there. Here's just another angle of that mountain loop, and one more. Here is a simple staging loop that's done by the Enland Group over in Southern California. Now this loop right here is a loop that belongs to the Minnesota group. It's a big staging yard, but also you've got to run around to turn trains around over top of the staging yard. And if you wanted to, there's a track at the end of the staging yard, which allows you to continue on with more modules should you choose to do that. Here's another just simple 3-track loop. Now, this image right here is what I can do with that loop that I built and those stub end yards. I can rearrange it and just build a little switching layout. And that's one of the things with Free-moN is the modules don't always have to go together in the same orientation every time. They can be flipped around and turned around. There is no front of the module. There is no back of the module. Any side can be a front. Any side can be the back, or both sides can be the front, depending on how the show is set up. For me, when I'm building Free-moN modules, I like to go through and figure out all my cuts and all my boards. I draw everything on AutoCAD and make sure that I know what I'm doing and how I'm building a module. I've probably built close to 100 modules for myself and for other people over the last 5 or 6 years. Again, everything is code 55 Atlas track. This is some of the track and switches that went on to the Farragut loop. And I've got, I think, 4 or 5 more presentations over the next year to do on Farragut on ZoomTRAK here. So look forward to those. This is the first layout that I set up. It's a loop only because I was really the only one there. Frank did show up later that day and he was there running trains. We set up the local library and that's where I started out 5 or 6 years ago. Fast forward to a couple months ago, and that's what my garage looks like with all the modules that I currently own stacked in piles, face to face in the garage. And I think I'm missing, there's no Farragut loop module, so there's another 12 modules that aren't shown there. Here's some frames that are headed out to a friend for him to work on and build his own modules. So this is what happened in August of 2021. We decided to, as a group of Free-moN guys, to rent the machine shop in Evanston, Wyoming. And this isn't quite the layout we set up. It had some variations. Some modules didn't show up and others showed up that weren't supposed to, but we squeezed it all in. We've got 15,000 square feet of layout with, I think we were close to 1,300 linear feet of modules, all running on DCC, and you could go anywhere on the layout and take trains anywhere. A lot of it was single track, but we had some really long double track sections. Some of them were about 100 feet long, 50 feet long, 80 feet long. I think we've got 8 or 9 different loops in there, a bunch of different stub end modules spaced out throughout the layout. Here's some images of that room that day that we set up. Just modules as far as you can see. We had a clinic area in the southwest corner of the building that we did clinics on Saturday, Friday and Saturday. Different views of what is possible with the Free-moN modules. We just spiderweb that thing everywhere. Here's that mountain module with the up and over. Here's another grain module loop right there, just scattered all over the building. In 2024, we're opening Evanston to all of the N-scale modular standards. The NTRAK and T-TRAK will be in the Roundhouse building, which is right there. Part of the building has been restored. Part of it is under restoration, and part of it, they're doing restoration of that steam locomotive. The turntable there is operational, and it'll be a great place to host all the different railroads. And this is in Evanston, Wyoming. It's about an hour and a half outside of Salt Lake City, Utah. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you all in Evanston. And I hope you are encouraged by what you saw and want to step up and build a Free-moN module.
Thank you, Lee. I think, yeah, Bruce is up next, and his talk is going to be about how we talked about putting the different types of modular formats together and linking them together so we can put NTRAK, T-TRAK, and Free-moN all in the same layout. Fire her up.
Okay. Connecting it is the theme, and the first question is why? Why connect? Well, for one thing, you can run longer trains on 2 layouts than you can on 1. We did that with NTRAK with junction modules connecting different layouts from different groups with using the junction modules, connect them. And we can now do that with, you'll see two examples of connecting different standards. Enjoy another flavor of N-scale module. So you may be an N-tracker, and this gives you an opportunity to run on T-TRAK or enjoy Free-moN and see what another module standard looks like. It might get you inspired to start expanding. Give another modeler the joy of seeing your train run on their module. People enjoy watching trains on their module. And so this way you can have trains from other layouts suddenly appearing on your layout because you can. Let's do it. It's a challenge. And then finally, show the other scale modelers what N-scale can do. We may have different standards, but we can interconnect. All right, what are we connecting? Well, we've got three standards we've talked about. T-TRAK is 2 tracks. Rail height is approximately 3.5. Sorry. That should have been 33.5 inches off the floor. We're doing everything off the floor. And it's actually 3.5 inches above the table. NTRAK is 3 tracks. Rail height is 40 inches. And Free-moN, 1 track, rail height 50 inches, although that can vary. Free-moN is the only one of these 3 standards that allows for grades. And I guess they just went ahead and made some upgrades to their standards regarding that. Now, one of the things to note here is that some of these dimensions are approximate because, number one, how many floors are perfectly even all through the hall? And in fact, I can remember being in a hall where, well, one place where we showed was actually an old movie theater, so there was a built-in slant in the floor, and another venue was a show barn, so there was actually grading of the floor so that it'll drain towards the center. So not all floors are straight. Table height and module heights can vary. Certainly banquet tables are not all a perfect 30 inches above the floor, so your T-TRAK modules are not necessarily all gonna match without some height adjustment. And then finally, standard allowance for variances have to be provided because some people have problems measuring. Okay, now I set up some examples here. The ideal grade is not 3%, but at 3%, if you have a rise of 6 to 7 inches, which is going from T-TRAK to NTRAK, you would require 200 to 233 feet of run in some way. If you're going NTRAK to Free-moN, you're now going a rise of 10 inches, again at 3% grade, which is not ideal, requires 333, actually it's 0.333 feet of run. And what you ideally want to do is have a grade of closer to 2%. So the first example, NTRAK to T-TRAK or T-TRAK to NTRAK, is a 4x4 module. Approximate grade is 2%, but it varies and it can be changed. I won't go into the details, but anyway, it's double tracked, has 3 turns, 3 complete turns, 21-inch radius on the outside, 19.5 inside. Switches at the top go take the 2 tracks of the helix from the outer track goes to red or yellow, and the inner track goes to yellow or blue. And then at the bottom, it connects directly into T-TRAK 2 to 2. So there's nothing more to be done there. This is a table which was put together by a chief engineer. Depending upon the helix height, if there's variance, what happens when you make changes, and he came up with this for outer grade and inner grade. You'll notice the inner grade is always a little bit more than the outer grade simply because it's less distance. All right, and this is a picture of what was built by Oklahoma NRail to connect the NTRAK modules on the left to the T-TRAK layout on the right. This actually, these piers here are interchangeable, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But again, not go into too much detail. So this is the NTRAK to T-TRAK. On NTRAK to Free-moN, again, it's a 4x4. Grade is approximately 2.8%. Single track entrance and exit, has 4 turns. There are switches both at the top and the bottom for a passing siding on the helix. Helper pockets top and bottom so that you can actually put a helper train on the train going up and then take it off at top. The top connects to any standard Free-moN module, and that's 1-to-1, and the bottom connects to any could connect to any NTRAK module, but in fact the Gateway group has built a Y module that is off of, or a special corner that's really also a Y module that connects single track so that when you come off of the helix, you can go either direction on the red line. And this is what it looks like. This is a top-down view with the Free-moN over here on the right side. And then on the bottom down here, you can see the switch for where the switch here for where the passing siding comes in, and this is the helper pocket. So that's the NTRAK Free-moN. Now, this is the NTRAK to T-TRAK helix in action. As I said, these posts that hold the roadbed are actually interchangeable. There are notches in here, and if you unscrew this nut on top, you can actually take them apart, and we've actually built another pair, and there's plans for a third pair which may or may not get built at some point, so that you can adjust depending upon the height of your T-TRAK and NTRAK layouts, and that can actually be done out in the field. So if you find there's a disparity, too much of a disparity, you can make that change. At this point, we've got 2 trains on the helix, and you'll notice over here on the right side, there's a connector. This is where the T-TRAK bus plugs in for both the inside and outside red and blue, red and yellow lines. And underneath the helix are switches which can isolate NTRAK from T-TRAK, or you can actually feed one layout from the other, depending upon how you want to do it. So as we're coming off the helix with the first train, we've got a third train that's about ready to appear on the top of the helix. I'm not going to show you the pictures of going back up because, in fact, as you can imagine, these long trains going up the helix needed some helper service, and we had some very unprototypical helper service by the North Coast Limited. We are going to come off of the helix now and go onto the T-TRAK layout, and you will see a special Y junction module we built, a corner module to connect to the helix, and there we are. That's on the T-TRAK. So details on the T-TRAK to NTRAK helix are available in the July-August 2020 NTRAK newsletter. At that time, it was still called NTRAK newsletter. And on the NRail website, we have all of the newsletters going all the way back to the first one. For more information on the NTRAK Free-moN helix, you can contact Gateway NTRAK. Jim Lynch is the person who built that. Hopefully he will write an article for us at some point or give a ZoomTRAK presentation. But in any case, these are 2 examples of what you can do, and that is how you go about connecting. So at this point, we will go on to JM.
Thank you, Bruce. All right, guys, I got on my clock. It is 4:58, and right now I am starting my stopwatch. And so I've been allocated 10 minutes. I am not going to exceed 10 minutes, Bruce, I promise. And by way of an advertisement, folks, stay tuned, because at the end of the 10 minutes, Bruce is probably going to put up a poll. Is that right, Bruce?
That's correct, yes.
Excellent. So what we want to do is at the end of this presentation, in less than 10 minutes, we want to get the questions answered so we can get your feedback about how we did today, what we can do better, and what we'll get into the questions later. Right now, I want to say, first off, Happy New Year. What a year it has been. And frankly, what a 50 years it has been. And I've got some notes in front of me here. Let me tell you who I am. First of all, I am Jean-Marc, J.M. Gadoury, and I've been blessed to be the advisor to the NRail board and to the NRail organization for the production of the YouTube channel. And we're going to look at the YouTube. I'm going to share the screen in just a moment so you can see what we're talking about. But to be honest with you, from 1973 to 2023, that's 50 years of N-scale modular model railroading. And we have gotten quite a view of all of it today. And it is frankly kind of hard to imagine how we couldn't go from 2023 to 2073 and be thinking about 100 years of NRail and how incredible it's going to be. Now, why am I being so enthusiastic and excited? Well, let me make an announcement. Just 7 hours ago, I'm a member of the Richmond area NTRAK in Richmond, Virginia. And 7 hours ago, we had our officer elections at the beginning of the year. And one of our famous officers, his name is Steve Stallnaker. Most of you know Steve as the editor of the NRail newsletter. And he was also our secretary. Well, he chose to retire from that post today, and filling his position was a man named Daniel Chu. Now, what you need to know about Daniel Chu is that he's a 19-year-old former student who is a model railroader and a rail fan tycoon, and he's very, very good at social media. Now, why am I telling you this? Well, I'm telling you this to encourage you that the future of model railroading and N-scale is very, very bright. And if we can bring folks like Daniel into our fold, give them things to do, give them responsibilities, and let them use their imagination, my goodness, guys, we are going to have the best of model railroading over the course of our time. All right, now I'm going to click and share screen because we've been doing this for 50 years. And we know that Jim Fitzgerald founded the newsletter, and he was among the founders. And so I'm just going to stay right here in this mini screen. But what you're looking at is 24 years ago. In 1999, my Richmond area NTRAK club, with a lot of help from the Northern Virginia NTRAK and clubs across the country and far away as Australia and Japan, we had members come to set up in Richmond, Virginia for what we referred to as the No Bull Unconvention. That's right. It was a model railroad convention where all the N's were capitalized. Why do we do that? You know. All right. So we did an unconvention, but guess who was there? You're looking right now at Jim Fitzgerald. And I'm going to try to play this. I know I've got a little bit of low bandwidth, but let's see what happens here over the next minute. Applause in the background. There's Jim. He is setting up a train. Yeah, he's unloading his box. I'm getting the low system resources warning, so sorry about that. And in fact, my video just paused. I bet you yours did too. But here it comes. Guess what that is? That is the Cotton Brute. I am showing you what we have been featuring is coming to you, coming to a train show near you, is the Cotton Brute restored. Here it was 24 years ago, and Jim was loading it up with coal cars. Because you know what we do as N-scalers, we run long trains, don't we? That's kind of the miracle of N, is that we can make prototypical trains that are really long, and the public looks at them and says, oh my gosh, that looks so real. And that, frankly, has inspired N-scalers for many, many years. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to pause that video. That's 5 minutes and 18 seconds. We've got 4 minutes and a half left. John Wallis, would you please unmute yourself? Because I have a question for you.
I'm
And
here.
board members, if you will also be in a reserve, here's what I'm going to do when I go to Amherst, Massachusetts for the Springfield massive train show up there in Massachusetts in 2 weekends. I'm going to bring a camera and a tripod, and I'm going to invite anyone who wants to come up to the NRail table to be interviewed. So the answers to 2 questions I'm about to ask to John, you can record on video. So John, lead us off. My question is, what was the first time you ever saw NTRAK as a module or as a layout?
It was in November of 1980. And the North Raleigh Model Railroad Club had a layout set up in North Hills Shopping Center in Raleigh.
And what impressed you about an NTRAK module?
The fact that they went together, the fact that you could make any size layout, and there was a degree of flexibility because we were able to run 2 trains, and back those days was DC, not DCC. We were able to run 2 trains by running a track behind the skyboard.
That's amazing. Thank you for that, John. You've just proceeded to give us the very first answers on the 50 years of NRail modular railroading celebration. You've just given us the first 2 answers. Now I'm hoping that every member is going to chime in. I'm going to go next to Razor. Razor, I'm going to ask you a slightly different question. What was the best NTRAK layout and scene that you ever remember witnessing?
Well, the neatest one is the one that I showed during the presentation where I had the arrowhead. We'd seen a group in California that had tried 30-degree corners, and I took that idea and we built our 30s and we set it up, and it was amazing. We were at one of the great train shows around the country, and they were here in Oklahoma, and we had plenty of room to set it up, and everyone was really excited about it because it wasn't just a rectangle. It was different. And we had all sorts of different modules in it as well. And that was the thing that I remember most.
Very good. And Bruce, I know we just heard from you several times today, but what I'm really curious to know, and you actually served after that and famous Jim Fitzgerald, you became the president of this organization, picking up after he left us way too soon, in our opinion. Tell us, what was the most impressive NTRAK layout that you ever saw?
I can't come up with one. I mean, I've seen a lot, and they're all fantastic. Each layout seems to have its own virtues that something that I find really inspiring. So I can't necessarily narrow it down to one that sticks.
Okay, let's switch topics then. What is the favorite project that you've ever worked on?
That's probably the SARE module that we did last year, and one of the big things about that was it was a team effort. The club did it. I came up with the wild idea that we were going to enter the Walters contest. And we had people who went out to SARE and took pictures, and one person helped with the construction of the module, another with wiring, and it was a team project, and it was really an enjoyable thing to work together and share.
That's outstanding. Okay, I've got 15 seconds left. If you've been itching to say, what was your favorite NTRAK moment ever? Unmute yourself right now. You got 15 seconds. Go.
Louisville, 701 modules.
Oh my gosh, you said it. Louisville was my favorite too. By the way, we have Louisville captured on video from 2008, and it's back on the YouTube channel, back on the NRail channel on YouTube. By the way, you can go to YouTube and you can type in the search window that's the @sign, @NRail, and it will take you immediately to our channel. You can share the channel with everyone in your friends list. And guys, I count on you. I'm counting on you to have those cameras, have your phones out, taking video and producing articles, not only for the NRail newsletter, but then to show us Show us and tell us what's so fantastic. Okay, we are now 45 seconds over time, so back to you, Razor, and Bruce, to your poll.
All right, well, Bruce got the poll up. I'm going to share the screen here for just a second
All right.
and give you
One quick thing. I really urge everybody to fill this out. Please do. It helps us. The feedback is really important for us. And we really appreciate you taking the time to do that. Go ahead, Razor.
Bruce, if I screen share, is that going to hide the poll?
I'm not sure about that.
Well, let's find out. Okay, this is the first preliminary layout diagram for Grapevine this August. You'll notice that at the top is an NTRAK loop. This is Bruce's group. This is an NTRAK loop. This is the Tulsa group. All this is T-TRAK. There are 48 or 50 tables. These are more NTRAK loops. And this is a small Free-moN area where the guy that has this has his Free-moN legs cut down to where they're 40-inch level, the same as NTRAK. So we have the helix that Bruce talked about is this right here where my arrow is. And this will be at the same height here. The rest of the Free-moN will be at the main hotel in Grapevine. They'll have a big Free-moN layout separate from this as well. But the point is, we're doing just what we said. We're putting all the different branches together into one monstrous 100 by 140 foot area for the Grapevine trade show.
Also, Razor, just to mention there in the lobby, the hotel lobby, the operations group will be using Free-moN modules there. So there will be a lot of N scale at Grapevine.
Right.
Gordy just asked me to mention this, that what Bruce and Razor just said, that we have a 67 by 67 foot layout that'll be set up over at the convention. You have to sign up. You have to be a member of the convention to sign up, but it will be running operations there. Gordy's really been pushing for this, and we're trying to make this a good thing over there. I won't be in attendance, but I am spearheading the coordination for it and getting everybody on the same page so that we can have a good event at the convention and also at the train show itself.
Okay. Again, we want to thank all of you who have joined us who are not members of NRail. If you have any questions, you can contact us.
info@nrail.org.
info@nrail.org.
Or just go to nrail.org, our website there, and there's a contact sheet, button that they can click on, and that'll give them a whole list of addresses for whatever.
And if you go to the website, you can get on the home page without being a member, and you can join NRail for $5 for the next year. Normal dues are $10 a year. You get the first year for $5. You get things like the ZoomTRAK, our magazine, which is our newsletter, which is published bi-monthly, and lots of other good things that go with being a member of NRail. We will hope to see you all next month. Our meeting next month, and for some of you who have written it down, it will be moved. It will be February the 11th. So put it on your calendar. Again, same time as you were for this one, wherever time zone you're in, the time zone hasn't changed. And our programs usually run right about an hour. And we hope to see all you again next year.
I have a question, and that is, is there a flyer that we could forward to modelers about the $5 deal?
Yes. In fact, there's a membership flyer on the homepage, and it has the discount code in there.
When I click to join us, I don't see anything about the special.
All right. It says become a member, join us. At the bottom, it says download the membership brochure.
Yes.
All right. That membership brochure has the membership code on it, and we'll make sure that we put something out with the membership code on there.
Okay, good. I see that.
Actually, we've got several different codes, And we'll put something up on the website for that.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have a flyer to send out to people.
Well, that if you click on the download the membership brochure and print out that flyer, it's a trifold that does have the discount code on it.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So again, the last thing is we are still working on the layout design for the N-Scale National Convention in Reno. We have a few slots available for individual modules, but we have 4 clubs that are already signed up with 4 loops that'll all be linked together in the NTRAK section. And we have a large T-TRAK section, and we have I think it's pretty well, at least pretty well filled up the Free-moN section, and we're trying to find more space for it. Unfortunately, we're not having a lot of luck with that, but we take what we can get. And but there is plenty of room right now for the Grapevine National Train Show in August in North Texas. So if you're interested in that, you can contact us about that.
Steve,
Yes.
I've got up here under activities and events, there's registration. There's registration for Reno and there's registration for NTS. And if you can use this for either module set. If you're doing NTRAK, make sure you specify that, and Steve will send you another form. We have very few registrations from T-TRAK folks for Reno, so get on the website. This is where you register your T-TRAK modules for Reno. You can also register T-TRAK modules for Grapevine on here. So this is on the website. Just click on activities and events, and that will take you right. It's open to everybody.
Okay,
You
good.
don't need to be a member. Also on the home page, if you click on this download membership brochure, that will bring up the brochure with the discount code. Down here at the bottom is contact us, and that has email addresses for us, including the store and newsletter editor, membership, and individual emails.
All right. Well, again, thank all of you for attending this Saturday, and hopefully you will all be back on February the 11th for our next ZoomTRAK meeting. Have a great rest of your weekend and Martin Luther King Day tomorrow. See you all next month.
We'll see you all. Bye.
See you, Razor.
All right.
Happy New
Thank
Year.
you very much. It was a pleasure to be in the meeting. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Loved it.